Good evening, braver angels. Ladies and gentlemen, it's good to be here with you tonight. We are embarking upon a new season in American politics, in the life of the nation, and certainly in the work and mission of braver angels. For us, of course, fundamentally, there is continuity. Whatever your feelings are about the election we all just experienced together, what remains consistent, what remains steady in our mission is the overarching moral and democratic imperative of strengthening our bonds with each other as American people and enkindling the flame of hope that it can warm all of us in this great republic that we call home. We are here tonight to reflect on the moment that we are in together, to deepen our commitment to this cause and to each other. And so, in service of that, we have several extraordinary conversations that we are going to bring to you, exploring different avenues of Braver Angels work in the realm of immigration reform, in the realm of media. We are going to reflect on the work that we engaged in on election day. And we're going to hear some special words from Braver Angels founders and co-founders. But to begin with, we are going to start off with a reading of the Braver Angels Way from our co-chairs at the Office of Field Organizing. And so those individuals can join us on screen and introduce themselves briefly. We will take a listen.
Hi, everybody. My name is Ian Smith. As John said, I am the blue co-chair of the Office of Field Operations, John. And Courtney.
And I'm Courtney Budd. I am one of the purple co-chairs, or the purple co-chair of Office of Field Operations. Glad to be with y'all.
Yes. And we're going to read the Braver Angels Way, which is how we approach each other in conversation and in connection. Is that going to be up on the screen? All right, thank you. So first one, probably the most famous one. We state our views freely and fully without fear. We treat people who disagree with us with honesty, dignity, and respect. We welcome opportunities to engage those with whom we disagree. We believe that all of us have blind spots and none of us are not worth talking to.
And feel free to read along. We seek to disagree accurately, avoiding exaggeration and stereotypes. We look for common ground where it exists and, if possible, find ways to work together. We believe that in disagreements, both sides share and learn. In Braver Angels, neither side is teaching the other or giving feedback on how to think or say things differently.
And thank you very much, Courtney Budd and Ian Smith from the Office of Field Operations. Thank you for the correction, Ian. I appreciate it. Now I would like to bring to our digital stage my good friend, Mónica Guzmán, to tell us a little bit about the next guest who will be sharing the spotlight.
Hi, everyone. I'm Mónica Guzmán. I'm Senior Fellow at Braver Angels and the host of the A Braver Way podcast, which is all about equipping people to bridge the political divide. I'm really privileged to join you today. It's a day for a lot of deep breaths for a lot of folks, and just really glad you're all here. So I want to introduce the people on screen with me with the blue and the red cap. You can guess what that signifies. And this is Rich London and Maury Wilkinson of North Carolina. And they spent parts of yesterday doing something pretty extraordinary, pretty brave. And I wondered actually if the two of you could tell us what you did yesterday.
Or you want to go ahead?
Yeah, we went to the polls together and talked to people. We were very encouraged by the response we got, and I was very nervous about doing this. I will fully admit, but it was a great experience. It was a very good. I'm so glad I did it, and with my friend Rich. Yes.
Yes, so the two of you went to the polls. And Rich, tell us a little more about what was the objective? You're both showing up to the polls on election day of all days together. Maury, you lean red, conservative, and Rich, you lean blue, liberal.
It
How?
was all about showing people that red and blues can talk with each other, can coexist with each other. That it doesn't matter who we vote for, it doesn't matter which political party or political candidate we're behind. We've got to live together in peace and cooperation the entire year, in the entire rest of our lives. And it was really awesome just having the visual connection or the visual icon there, standing side by side with the sign saying, we're red and blue, and we are still getting along and still.
So I believe we have a visual.
Okay.
Here it comes. There it is.
There we go.
There we are.
So this was not from yesterday, I believe. You've actually done this now 3 times. Yesterday
Three
was
times.
the third.
The first time, this picture is from the second day of early voting in Matthews, North Carolina, right outside of Charlotte. And it was awesome. People were coming up to us. We were handing out the business cards, asking them, do you know anything about Braver Angels? Whether they said yes or no. If they said no, we're all about bridging the red-blue divide. We've got to get along, and virtually everybody for the entire day was like, that's important. Yeah, we need to be able to do that. We handle
Actually, Maury, I think you told me one of the most memorable moments, not from election day, but from a prior time, or maybe it was Rich. Somebody said something to the effect of how important that was. Can you recount that?
Yeah, he pointed, he was looking at our signs and reading them and just pointed and talking to the people with them that this is really important. And, that was very encouraging to us.
And he said it loud enough for the line of folks to hear.
Yes.
Yeah.
He was still like 2 or 3 people away from us and saw the sign, pointed to it and said that loud enough that we could hear. So I know everybody else around him heard.
Yeah. So Maury, you mentioned at the beginning of this conversation that you felt nervous. And earlier we talked and you said that there was a moment where, you being conservative, you kind of looked across the street or wherever it was, you saw Rich, there were Harris wall signs, and you thought, what was it that you thought in that moment?
Well, I just felt I'm going to have to go and stand around all these blues, where, I thought I don't want to stand there. And then I thought, well, that's the perfect place for me to stand and show that I want to talk to everybody and listen to everybody and understand what everybody believes.
And before you came to Braver Angels, you were saying that you were surprised. You were surprised that you would find yourself at a place like that next to Rich. Tell us about that.
Well, I just feel like I've spent most of my life in separate little bubbles, and I don't want to offend anybody in the particular bubble. And so I wouldn't want to, if I'm in one of my bubbles with my blue friends, I don't want them to know I'm a red, is the kind of attitude I took before. And so I'm trying to be very brave now. And I feel like that if I can't say who I am, that's not good. But I need to be able to listen to the others too, to inform my thoughts.
Yeah. So let's zoom in on that. We just heard from the Braver Angels way. And the first principle is to speak fully, freely, and without fear. And it does occur to me that there's something about, you just said, I'd rather not even share my politics. You're wearing a red cap today, and you wore a red cap yesterday. And Rich, you're wearing a blue cap. So what has that journey been like where you're able to wear your politics right on your head, right there out loud, and in front of people? Let's talk about yesterday. In front of people who are doing their civic duty on the most divisive day on our calendar, where we're making these choices separately. So I want to hear from Rich first, and then Maury.
Well, for me, it was just so important for me to be able to say, here, this is who I am, and I think that getting along with others is important. And being able to have people see whether there's two people standing in front of me that are willing to say they can get along despite their differences of opinion.
Maury, go ahead. Yeah.
Well, one of the things that really was important to me on election day, we didn't have a lot of people around here voted early, and we really didn't talk to that many voters on election day. But we talked to the other people, the poll workers. And I went over to the red table and said to them, I'm one of you, but I am here with Braver Angels, and pointed to Rich and said, that's my blue friend who and we're here together because we both know how important it is for people to be able to talk to each other and listen to each other. And that felt really good. And
I was blessed to be able to do exactly the same thing to the blue table and go up to them and say, hey guys, this is who we are, this is what we're doing. And even though they're standing there representing, a given party, they said, yes, we've got to learn how to get along. America's got to learn how to get along. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
One of the things I thought was really so cool was Maury had the opportunity. I'm just going to say what happened, and Maury, you can talk about it, how you felt. One of the senatorial candidates, red candidates, was there, and she went up to him and talked with him about Braver Angels and gave him a card and spoke with him.
Wow.
Yeah, and that was totally out of I would never have thought I would do something like that, but I did it. It was a great conversation, and he was very receptive too. And I hope he remembers Braver Angels. He won his election and will be and will be a member of Congress. So that was encouraging.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So tell us, I know that folks, when we were talking about the hundreds of people who are going to be doing what you two did across the country, and hundreds of people did, there were conversations about, but it's really scary. What kind of reactions will they get? There's people afraid that, bridging the divide means abandoning your principles. That having a friend on the other side means that there's somehow you're abdicating something. You're giving up something that cannot be given up. And there's a lot of concerns out there around that. Tell us about the reactions you got. Was there any trepidation when you were there? What was the feeling once you actually experienced this?
It was very positive. I mean, I had a lot, like I said, I had a lot of trepidation going into it, but everyone was very receptive. And I think that, we hear all the real negative stuff all the time. And I think more people want to be able to talk to each other and listen than we might think,
The 3 times we went, twice during early voting and once yesterday, out of all the people we saw, talked to, made eye contact with, the most violent it got, there were two people that turned their head away and said, no, thank you. Two people out of 3 days. And there was everybody else was, this is a great idea. Yes, we have to do this. Yes, it's so important for the country.
So I have a question I want to ask each of you in turn. And this one folds in the fact that we have the result of our election. One of the questions that Braver Angels is offering to folks in this period is to ask ourselves, and this was actually offered before the result, just as the election was coming. You know, can we reflect for ourselves on the question, how will we be? How are we going to show up? How are we going to treat other people in victory, defeat, uncertainty, or crisis? So you two were in a battleground state of North Carolina. And so all eyes were even more on your state. So first in victory, and Maury, you're wearing the red hat. You know, you're experiencing, your side is experiencing victory. If you didn't know Rich in particular, and this movement in general, how would your experience of the last couple of days have been different, both during election day and also after, when you had the result?
Well, I would have probably been in my little bubble with my red friends and maybe saying some things that I shouldn't have. And today, well, let me just say about today, the day after, I live in a senior community, so I see a lot of people, and we have reds and blues. And I saw some, I saw some of my blue friends today and put myself into their position. I knew that they were hurting today. And I wasn't hurting that way, but I feel like I'm more conscious of what the other side, how they might be feeling,
How has that impacted your behavior today? That consciousness?
Just, but I think I've been kinder. I mean, I'm kinder. I'm just more considerate, and I'm following the Braver Angels way and it's just a better way to be. And we're all part of, Rich and I might be different politically, but we're both humans, and we both have, it's not me against him. We're all part of the same human family, and we should treat each other well.
So Rich, same question to you. You're wearing the blue cap. So that's electoral defeat. And that reflection question of who are we in defeat? How do we treat other people in defeat? If you didn't know Maury in particular, or this movement in general, how would your experience of the last 2 days have been different?
I think I would have, without Braver Angels, the exposure that I've had to Braver Angels and adopting the Braver Angels philosophy, I would be far more upset, dejected, so much out on getting involved in the extreme of this is a horrible situation, et cetera, et cetera. One of the things, and this was one of the interesting things that Maury and I had a discussion on during the week, and that was that is before the election, both of us agreed that based on the bubbles that we are in, that we would see it as horrible for the country if the other person won, that democracy would be at risk, that all these things. And when I realized my perception of what's going to happen or could happen if Trump wins and the country will go down the tubes was exactly the same as Maury's perception of what would happen if Kamala wins, then the country's going down the tubes. I realize so much. We're so jaded by the politics of the media that we listen to that we're not seeing whatever the reality is, because there's always a truth somewhere in between the two sides. And I think we have the ability to be hopeful, to say we can work out and cooperate together, and maybe even hopefully set the tone for our leaders, seeing that the people from the grassroots don't want the animosity.
Yeah. So you've answered my last question before I even asked it, which is, what are the sorts of things that you've learned from having this experience together that you want to pass on to people experiencing defeat, victory, the mixed emotions of this time? And I guess because we're starting to answer it, I'll add an element to that, which is, what would you say specifically to people's fears, which, you know, are pretty pronounced for many, many people. So Maury, tell us about that. What would you say to folks on your side and on Rich's side, who, particularly maybe Rich's side, but are experiencing a lot of fears that you've learned from this experience? And then we'll close with Rich as well.
You know, I mean, I guess to think of it the other way around, and that you know, if my red friends have fears, to that they know that their blue family and friends also have fears, and then often we have the same sort of objectives. We have different ideas about how to achieve those objectives, and it's okay to have these fears, but just learn, just realize that we're you know, we're all the same on some level, and that you know, we can work it out.
Yeah. Rich, what would you say?
I have long had the philosophy, when it comes to presidential elections and history, the US, that over time, things are never as bad as you expect them to be.
Yeah.
And 4, 8, 12 years from now, in the next election cycles, whoever the next president is, or whatever party is in control, may run and dictate the current policies of that time, or a given law or movement will go through, but the country's going to survive regardless. Things are, you know, far more divisive have happened to our country over the centuries, and we're going to work it out. It's going to work out, and whichever party rules for the next 4 years may not be, most probably won't be the party that's in complete control for the 4 years after that. The country will survive. We just have to remember that.
Well, thank you both so much for your courage and for modeling something that seems really essential, just a deep, deep need. Thank you both. And for all the nervousness you had, you still did it. You still showed up. You did it. And if only we could have the hundreds of people who did it around the country here to share their stories. But boy, thank you. Thank you both so much.
Thank you, Monica.
You.
Thank you. And I'll hand it off back to John.
Thank you to all three of you. As Monica said, Rich and Maury were just two of many pairs who were out there in the field on election day, in the midst of all the tension, in the midst of all the apprehension, quite genuinely waving the banner of American hope, metaphorically speaking, but you saw the hats, holding the ground and letting people know that whichever direction they were voting, there's a community, a movement, and a family of Americans of each party and no party who are here to embrace them in a spirit of goodwill and patriotic empathy, if you will. And so we are going to hear more from some Americans who are just like that in a conversation that delves into one of the most contentious issues of this election cycle and many others, and that is the subject of immigration. And to introduce that topic to us is my dear friend and Braver Angels co-founder, David Lapp.
Good evening, and good evening, fellow Braver Angels. Very glad to be joined here tonight by two wonderful friends and colleagues, Jim Robb from Numbers USA and Diego Sánchez from the President's Alliance on Higher Education and Immigration. And there's Diego. So good evening, my friends. Good to be with you. And just for our Braver Angels friends, at the Braver Angels convention this past summer in Kenosha, the 750 delegates, equal number of reds and blues, and many independents voted to advance immigration as a priority for Braver Angels to find common ground on over the next couple of years. And so Jim and Diego are key leaders in that effort, what we're calling the Braver Angels Citizens Commission on Immigration. Jim, let's start with you. Jim, tell us a little bit about who you are and the work that you do.
Yeah, I'm Jim Robb. I live in Falls Church, Virginia, and I work with Numbers USA for the last 28 years when it was founded. Numbers USA is an organization that has grassroots membership. We have members in every county in America, and we're dedicated to trying to modernize and reform the U.S. immigration system to make it work for Americans in the 21st century. And it's been kind of a tall order, but we're plugging away. And I'm so glad I found about Braver Angels, been to the last two conventions, and have gotten deeply involved because we've been looking for bipartisanship, and it's hard to find in Washington.
And Jim, just so people have an understanding, how would you locate yourself on the spectrum of, the opinion on immigration? Where would you be on that spectrum?
Well, I'm personally a red. We have a bipartisan organization with blue and red staff and board members and members, grassroots members. But in recent years, we've trended more red because the parties have been so at each other's throats on immigration that they've kind of made you choose sides and go to corners. And that's what we're trying to fight with here.
Excellent. Diego, tell us about who you are and the work that you do.
Thanks, David. Thanks, Jim. Hi, everyone. I'm happy to be with you all here today. My journey in this work is personal. I'm originally from Argentina, where I actually am right now. I was undocumented for over 13 years. I was a beneficiary of the DACA program, which changed my life in profound ways. Some years ago, I was able to adjust my status. I am now a U.S. citizen. This past election was very important for me because it was, I don't know if I shared this with you too, but I voted in a presidential election for the first time. Professionally, I practiced immigration law for a couple of years. Now I serve as a director of policy and strategy for the President's Alliance, which is an alliance of over 550 presidents and chancellors of colleges and universities around the country. And our focus is on advancing bipartisan policies that support undocumented immigrant, international refugee students, and also graduates from our campuses. It's work that I approach with a deep sense of purpose and that's rooted in my own experience and and those of the communities that we serve.
Yeah. So Diego, tell us how you are feeling about the election results of the last 24 hours. And as a leader, how are you thinking about the moment?
Sure. In short and honestly, I'll say that I'm feeling pretty scared. Um, having grown up undocumented, having a lot of undocumented family and friends, this election results basically signal a climate that poses real risks, especially to immigrant communities, undocumented, students, not only, graduates in general, but just undocumented individuals in general. And we've been pushing for policies that empower these groups, allow these groups to, integrate themselves into society so that they can contribute, continue to contribute to our economy and workforce, et cetera. And now it feels like, those very policies may be in jeopardy, or they will be. I just can't, ignore that sense of, vulnerability. It feels very personal and urgent. I don't need to remind you all that, the winning team has promised to carry the largest mass deportation operation, right? I don't want to repeat that, but, as a leader in this work, my priority is to, our priority and, with partners and other stakeholders is to try and minimize harm. In times like this, it's easy to get caught up in the uncertainty and the fear. But I believe, it's very important to, more important than ever, to just stay anchored and proactive. This moment demands resilience, not only, for myself, but, for also the entire community that we serve. There's so much at stake and staying focused on what we can do rather than on what, we can't control. And then I think that I shared this with both of you earlier is that, on a personal level, the fear, it's personal because I am married to a wonderful woman in Argentina. That's why I'm here in Argentina. We're in the process of getting married in church through church. And so we're doing all that paperwork, all the courses and the classes, et cetera, for January. And I'm currently in the process of bringing her to the US, and the prospect of her journey just being affected by the political shift, and just adds that to my sense of urgency. I'm afraid. I hope not. And Jim says that hopefully this won't happen, but I am afraid, that the new administration might make this process more challenging and, or introduce new barriers for families like mine. I'm holding on to, the belief that, in difficult times, we have to adapt, find allies, build, strategies to protect and empower those that we represent. It's not an easy path, but, it's one that I'm committed to walking, both as, as a leader and someone who, who knows the importance of the stakes, on a personal level. That's why
Yeah,
I'm doing.
the stakes are very high for you personally, for the people that you're working with. It's very existential. Jim, how about you? How are you feeling about what's happened in the last 24 hours, and how are you making sense of it?
Well, first, I want to just respond personally to Diego, as I was chatting with you earlier, that my organization, Numbers USA, has always had the policy of unlimited spouse reunification and reunification with minor children. So, yes, no, I know things like this can happen when you have a shift administration. There can be all kinds of paperwork problems suddenly show up, right? But we wouldn't support that, and so we'll stay in touch about this. That situation. How I feel about the election? Well, I was glad to see the change, because the border has been very chaotic under Biden and Harris, and if frankly, everyone I think who's working in immigration professionally is just been a big hindrance to all of us, because not only is it terrible policy bringing in people who sort of bankrupting whole cities because they come in but they can't immediately be put to work. It's not even legal for them to work in many cases, and so it's a problem. But also it gives a sense of emergency and raises the stakes too much. And in fact, one of the things that I didn't like about this election was that both sides catastrophized, as we say these days, catastrophized the stakes. And Elon Musk said, "This is, you don't vote for my guy, it's your last vote ever," right? And then the other side was talking about fascism and Hitlerism, and it's like, oh, so of course people are upset around the country because both sides have told them that whatever you do, it's likely to be the end of all things. It's like a post-apocalyptic movie. And one thing I love about Braver Angels is we need to get off this with this obsession about making of course people want to win, but these ridiculous statements like our democracy is so fragile it's going to fold the first minute a bit of pressure is put on. Okay, but I'm glad in terms of immigration that a change is coming governmentally. I think with a Biden-Harris administration, it's been impossible to make any progress. I think Trump is going to force the situation, and there are going to be a lot of changes. But still, he needs things to happen in law if it's going to last beyond him. And so I think it ought to be a wake-up call for all of us to let's get there in the kitchen and start, let's start stuffing the sausages and get some progress while we have a window. And I realize others may feel like, oh, the window's closed. But I feel like since everybody knows Trump is going to be doing stuff on immigration, I think he will have focused all our attention. And that can be used creatively. And that's one reason I'm really glad we're doing the Citizens Commission. I'm very excited about it.
Yeah. And so, Diego, if you could just share with the Brave Angels in the call here, how did you and Jim begin working together on immigration? And what do you, Diego, hope to accomplish from working together with people like Jim and others across the ideological spectrum on immigration?
And I'll share a line of what I said during, one of our first meetings, is that I never thought I would be sitting next to Jim and sharing each other's contact information after that first meeting. I think we found we found ourselves on this issue because I think we both recognize the value of rebuilding trust, not only with each other, but also the American people in general. It's an issue. Immigration is an issue that if we continue to not find a solution, it's an issue that becomes vulnerable to the kind of weaponization that divides us and ultimately weakens all of us. For me, this collaboration is about showing that even on issues as charged as immigration, there's a way to approach the work in a way that invites dialogue across differences. I think, in the immigration space, we often find ourselves speaking past each other, and we're never going to find solutions that way. And so we need to navigate our own perspectives, yes, but we're also, aiming to, set an example for reaching across, the aisle. And, what do I want to accomplish with this, or what do I hope to accomplish? I have to agree with Jim. The current situation at the border isn't working for anyone. We do need an orderly and humane approach to manage the border. one that respects, both security concerns and human dignity at the same time. Through our collaboration in Braver Angels, I think it's important to just create pathways for gradual, effective change that that respects diverse concerns that people have about immigration without resorting to extremes. And so, there's strong bipartisan support for legal immigration and for reforms that balance enforcement with opportunities for immigrants, and especially for those who have been in the country contributing for a long time. And I believe that by addressing these concerns constructively, we can create or we can work towards creating a system that is both fair and, functional. So, ultimately, I think I see this work as essential to laying the foundation of trust and rebuilding public confidence as well, in how we address such a complex issue. It's about creating lasting solutions that, that reflects the best of who we are and the country that we aspire to be.
Jim, I've heard you describe yourself as a fighter, and you've been at this issue for a couple decades. So why are you spending time with 3 decades? Why are you spending time with Diego, and what are you hoping to accomplish from working together with him?
First, there's a real practical reason that after 3 decades, though we have proven we can knock down just about any bill that we don't like, the other people and the other side, that the various other sides have proven they can do the same thing. So we've achieved mutually assured destruction of all our ideas, and so that's why we've made almost no progress for 30 years on that. So having realized that, I realize we have to work with each other. And first, let's start with the realization or the admitting that we're all good Americans. We all love our country, and we all want to help our country. And so if we just can admit that about each other and start from admitting the good intentions of all involved, instead of fighting dirty, because you can fight clean, you can fight dirty. We can talk about the issues, or we can talk about each other, but I'm not going to do that, and we're not going to do that. And I think, and Diego and I see a lot of fellow feeling in us. We're both kind of pragmatists. We want to get something done. We realize how hard it is to get something done, and we're gonna do everything we can to do something. So that's why.
Jim, I heard you say something today when you were talking about why this work is important to you and in the context of the election. You talked about this idea of, yes, okay, like your side of the immigration debate, if you will, won the election. Your hope for the future is that by working together, we can do what?
Oh, so working together. Well, so you can't really just win an election and accomplish very much. So whoever wins the election does a bunch of executive orders, and some things, pieces are moved around on the board, and you get a bunch of headlines, and some policies change for a while until the next guy gets elected, or gal, and changes it all back. And so I'm realizing more than ever before that the Constitution gives the power on immigration to the Congress. All power resides with Congress. Courts get involved only because Congress isn't clear. And so if we can bring everyone into the room with our workshops, everywhere in the United States, every state, all important localities, get them bringing proposals up, and we can work on them and choose among the ones that we think will fly, and then work with Congress the entire time, and saying, look, we're figuring out how to work together for a change. Listen to us. I'm feeling, so I don't want to have I've lost I've lost all belief in power politics as the solution. We have the missing ingredient in American politics isn't compromise, it's agreement. People won't compromise if they feel like they're compromising away their deepest principles. But if we can find agreement and find things that, hey, I didn't know you thought that, and yeah, maybe we could do this together, then people don't feel like they're doing something unholy by agreeing. Rather the opposite. So I'm really excited.
And you said something that really struck me. You said, I'm hopeful that we'll be able to find some ways to win together. You and Diego, organization leaders from across the ways that we can win together. That's a really striking thought there. Diego, I'm really struck by you spoke very eloquently and about the deep concern that you have about your personal situation and other immigrants that you work with, and you're also here in this space with Jim. So as I see it, you're fighting passionately for something you believe very strongly in, and you're looking for ways to bridge the divide, and you're doing both things at the same time, is what it looks like to me. How do you think about that, and what motivates you to continue in the work, particularly after the election results? I mean, you could say, well, okay, why not just drop this part of let's bridge the divide now?
Well, I think that moments like these where I don't think that most of my friends, partners on this issue, right, would want to even work with the Trump administration, would not even want to work with a Republican Congress. I'm more of the mind that you have to work with everyone, right? You can't just pick and choose. And the fact that, there are a few of us who are more towards the middle, more pragmatic, and it's moments like these that remind us of why we're here and the true purpose of this work. I feel like when we see the divisions and the challenges that we face, that our communities face, right? I feel that somewhat a renewed sense of purpose, right? I'm exhausted, but I'm also ready to get some rest and ready to think and to plan and to work, right, with both sides. I think the thought of what could happen if we fail to find humane solutions is a powerful motivator. I don't mean to repeat the same thing, but deporting millions and tearing families apart would be more than just a policy failure for me. I think it's just a human tragedy with lasting impacts, right? We're talking about ripple effects to our economies, not only to our communities, to the workforce, etc. Losing hardworking people who contribute daily, I think would be a setback that we can't afford as a country. Our economy can't afford it, for sure. This isn't just a policy debate. It's personal, on all, on every level. But that's why I think our work needs to be focused on building that trust. And Jim and I are working on it. It takes time, right? Especially when our sides have spent so much time just speaking past each other. And so I'd like to work towards an immigration system that reflects humanity and and integrity. And we have to build bridges, that reach across, party lines and move towards solutions that reflect the best of who we are.
Yes. And just also a word to say to fellow Braver Angels out there that this Citizens Commission on Immigration, of which Jim and Diego are on the leadership team for, there are going to be many opportunities, over the next 2 years for people to be involved, organize common ground workshops and Braver Angels debates in your local community to participate in one of these. And Jim and Diego are participating, will be participating in something we call the Immigration Policy Roundtable, a group of advocates and experts, a small group meeting to build those relationships of trust and to see what common ground might be possible, again, over the next 2 years. And all this work will culminate in a report to the nation. We'll see what common ground we find from the grassroots and from the advocates and experts like Jim and Diego coming together. And so there are others like Jim and Diego involved in this work, and it's really inspiring to see. And you both have said something that it seems is really key, and you cannot ignore it, which is build trust, relationships. If you just go towards saying, okay, what's the policy that we can hammer out, but don't have the trust, is that really going to work? And so what I'm hearing you both say is you want to do both. You want to find the common ground, but you got to build the trust and the relationship there in order to really be able to do something meaningful. So John, Brother John, I see you coming on here. Feel free to move us along if that's where we are.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, thank you very much, David, Diego, Jim. And let me just say, I greatly appreciate each of you. I appreciate, Diego, the candor and even the vulnerability with which you're willing to show up here in this space. We all of us agree that the stakes of these elections are high. But of course, that doesn't mean that the stakes don't feel somewhat different to us depending on who we are, depending on the experience and the identity that we bring with us into the conversation. And Diego, you've been very candid about your perspective and where you're coming from and what the stakes feel like to you. And Jim, I do want to say to you very quickly, as somebody who I've gotten to know a bit over these recent months, that as I'm sure Diego and many of us can sympathize with, I know that you face great pressure within the advocacy community around immigration from folks of your political persuasion to take a much less charitable approach to the work that you do than you do. And yet you still you make the conscious decision to speak to the humanity in your opponents and to try and make friends and co-creators, collaborators out of them. And that's precisely the spirit that we seek to embody here at Braver Angels. So I thank you, my friend. I thank all three of you. And both to put this conversation to an end, but eager to get to the next one. And so I want to now bring up to the virtual stage here my brilliant friend and colleague, Braver Angels Director of Communications, Gabriella Timmis, to introduce a very special guest.
Awesome. Thank you, John. And thank you everyone for joining us tonight. I am so excited to welcome here Batya Ungar-Sargon with us. Batya is the opinion editor at Newsweek and the author most recently of Second Class: How Elites Betrayed Americans' Working Men and Women. She also works with the Free Press and was a part of their election coverage last night. She also worked to get Braver Angels a part of the election coverage last night. So thank you, Batya, for always keeping us in mind. That was really huge for us. And so I know a lot of Braver Angels folks were actually tuning in. They sent me the screenshots of the little snippets of Braver Angels and all that. And since they did tune in, they also saw your fabulous hair. And I'd like to get a screen share on that because this is maybe my most important question of the night is, how did you get your hair looking that awesome? And I mean that from the bottom of my heart. I need to figure out how to do this myself. So I got to figure out, how did you do this, Batya? This is amazing.
It's so funny because I think in retrospect, I maybe should not have done it because it's really the #1 comment I got about, and I think that the Free Press got, and it got like to this ridiculous level. Like people were tweeting at me like, Batya's beehive flips Pennsylvania, and Batya's beehive wins the night. When is Batya's beehive running for office? And it was hilarious, but I think it was maybe a little too distracting for the task at hand. Yeah, I had a lot of fun with it.
All right, awesome. Okay, Mark, you can take it down. I saw and I immediately was like, that was awesome. So I had to ask about that. So thank you for that. I always love, frankly, I always love when we're having these like important conversations. It's like, how can we also bring some like fabulous hair, makeup, whatever? Like as a woman, it's like the great benefit of my life to do stuff like that. Okay. So Batya, I'm gonna shift for a minute. I'm going to do something that I think every person loves, which is I'm gonna quote you back to you right now. So last night you tweeted, you said, I wanted Trump to win, but more than that, I wanted a decisive victory. If it's true he won the popular vote, and now we know it is, that is a mandate to lead. Calling Trump Hitler is now proven to be what it always was, an unforgivable smear of the majority of Americans. It's time to embrace unity. I went into tonight thinking Kamala Harris would win and prepared to accept that and was prepared to accept that with grace and embrace unity. Now that Trump has won, I think it's 10 times as important to accept it with grace and embrace unity. Let's find our way back to each other for a better future. So one thing that I'll point out is that Batya, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that you came to the work of Braver Angels when Biden was, he still is in office, but, in the past couple of years. So when someone that I think it's fair to say you've been kind of critical of Biden. So it's not like you're just coming to the work of Brave Angels and trying to bridge the partisan divide when, someone that maybe you wanted in office is in office. You did it when you were even frustrated with leadership and, frustrated with a lot of those decisions being made. So firstly, I just want to thank you for coming to our work. I mean, you show up for us in Kenosha, you show up for us in Gettysburg, you show up for us tonight. And I just really want to know, for you and your work in media, why is this work important to you? Why is it so important to be a part of this work of, trying to bridge the political divide?
I just think you guys are doing God's work, and I've been thinking about you guys nonstop over the last few weeks, and to just like thinking about it's just funny because I said this to Barry last night on the show, but I came into the evening thinking that Kamala Harris was going to win, and I had surprised myself and endorsed Trump at the last minute. Just I had been undecided for a very long time, and when I became decided, I felt that it was my job to be honest as a journalist, even though there's a huge taboo around him still. And I thought Kamala Harris was going to win. And I just felt that you guys had laid the groundwork for what that meant for each of us as Americans, what the spiritual mandate was for each of us. And in fact, there was a moment on the show when Dr. Phil came on, and it was still when we thought Kamala Harris was going to win. And I said to him, my question for you is, what can I do to make America more unified? Not like I want them to do this thing. What can I do in myself, in my spiritual practice, in my psychological practice to be a better American right now, every day? And his answer was so beautiful. He said, go knock on the door of one of your neighbors, especially if they have a sign that's the other sign, and say, I just want to know you. I just want to be your neighbor and not a stranger. And you don't have to talk about the thing, talk about other things. It doesn't matter. And so I think, the work you guys are doing of stitching back together the fabric of our society, I cannot tell you how powerful it was to have those Braver Angels videos interspersed in our live stream. And our live stream, I think, was seen by 500,000 people. So like it was just so powerful to see people coming together. And I can't even I just don't even know how to say beyond that. I just think you're doing God's work, and this is where it's at. This is where it's at. And by the way, Barry doesn't partner with anybody who's not where it's at. She has a real talent and gift for that. So it's just anything I can do to help get the message out to more people, because what you guys have done for me personally just is so important. And, I really did have, I've been on a journey, as you pointed out, I did have the Trump derangement syndrome. And I think that the first moment that I realized I could get rid of it and go on this, 10-year journey to finally the endorsement was, I got so sick of feeling angry. I just got so sick of that feeling because rage is such a powerless emotion. Or maybe that's just me, but I experience it as powerless, and I experience powerlessness as very enraging. And I've just got so sick of that. And I thought, you know what? I have to understand what these people see in this person because I find him so enraging. I find it so enraging. And I'm so sick of that feeling. Like I've been feeling it all through 2015 and all through 2016 and 2017. Like, how long can we feel so angry already? It's exhausting and it's infuriating. And I had other things to do and other things to be and other things to feel. So I think that it's just giving people an off-ramp from their rage is like, I cannot think of a more important thing for an American to be doing right now. And so I just, God bless everybody here, everyone on this call, and everyone doing this holy work.
Oh, I so appreciate hearing that. And you know, it is interesting for me because, you know, in Braver Angels terms, I'm a blue. So, you know, I'm disappointed with the results. And I'm talking to my friends who are, you know, quote, on my side, but I'm steady. I'm feeling okay because I have a role. Like I know what my next step is. I'm not floundering. I'm not feeling hopeless. I'm not feeling like I don't know where to go. I know I'm right here. You know what I mean? I'm where I'm supposed to be in this work. And so for me, it's almost like, you know, there's almost like a sense of guilt. Like I want to feel what you feel. I want to empathize with you, but also I'm not there right now because I know that I am where I need to be. And so it's interesting because so my background's in media. I graduated college and I started working at NBC News, and it's a lot of fun working. You know, I'm from Michigan. I'm born and raised from Michigan. Went to college in Michigan. So my first time, you know, leaving Michigan was living in New York City and going to work at 30 Rock, and like what a complete mind shift that was, and in the best way, but also just like I remember being in that building, and it was during the first Trump administration, and just feeling really disconnected from people. Like, you know, I'm very lucky that, you know, I come from a politically divided family. I did the red blue pair with my dad. So I come from a politically divided family. We're all over the place, and my friends, you know, I always say half the people I love voted differently than I did. So if I cut out everyone that voted differently, I would lose half my friends. But I remember being at 30 Rock and just feeling like, I don't know where Americans are at right now. Like I think especially when you're in media, it is a bubble, you know, and you do kind of lose touch with people. And so when I came to Braver Angels, you know, it really was one of the biggest motivations was like, I want to be in it. Like, I want to be where the people are. I want to be at the grassroots. I want to be like, and I volunteered Braver Angels now because I'm like, I want to be so in it. I want to be a part of all that work. So, and it's just, you know, I think there's no better gift when you're someone that's you know, interviewing everyday people and talking to people about where they're at than being in this type of work. So again, like I can't appreciate you enough for being in all this with us, because it's crazy, but it's also like, you know, journalists come to this work and they say, oh, this is really great for a story. And I think what you've said, Batya, is you're like, this is the story. You know, this is a blip. This is where it's at. So again, just can't thank you enough. I do want to ask just a bit about, because we're talking about media here and just the scope of media. I feel like 2024 is to podcasts as 2008 is to social media. It was like the breakthrough of, you know, how candidates communicate with everyday, you know, American people. Suddenly they're in our ears. They're with our favorite podcast hosts. You know, to me, I guess there's something really cool to that it's not, that feels like there's less of a barrier, you know, maybe a bit of a wall coming down. I'm curious how you kind of saw the media landscape leading up to and during this election, and what that might mean going forward.
It's so funny because like there's a different vibe in each outlet. So the vibe at the Free Press last night was just super interesting because they polled that we had a retreat, and they polled us about who we were voting for, and a third were Trump, a third were Harris, and a third were undecided / write-in / neither. So it was a really interesting, diverse cast of characters last night, but that's very rare. So today I had a hit at Fox and then a hit at News Nation. And of course, the vibe was like totally different. Like you go into Fox and everyone is just like over the moon. And then you go to News Nation and it was a little bit like actually much more somber, you know, and it's because each outlet has its kind of designated, you know, like most media is, if, you know, the young people who work there are, you know, highly educated and quite left. So it's just really interesting how the media has become very polarized. So I think that that's a very interesting phenomenon. And then seeing how the podcasts have broken out, I think what's really cool about it is like it's not like Trump went on. I mean, maybe he did do Charlie Kirk, but like the podcast he went on was like Theo Vaughn, who's like not political at all, and or like Joe Rogan. Like these people are not political; they're just personalities. So in a way, it was like and there was this one that I watched. It was so good. I forget what it's called. Maybe Andrew Schultz is the guy. It was like him and another guy. Is that his
Yeah.
name?
Yeah.
It was just amazing because they're comedians and they brought that side out in Trump, but it was like they spoke almost not at all about like policy or politics. You didn't come away knowing how those guys voted or were gonna vote. That's really cool. Like that, like bringing politics out of the political and back into just like regular, like it's really interesting because like these guys are not political, which is why they don't read as like, hardcore Democrats, hardcore Republicans. They don't read as like MSNBC or Fox News. And that I really like. Like, I think that's awesome. The media has lost all credibility. Like they've just been the role that the mainstream media played first in disguising Joe Biden's mental decline and then in gaslighting us about it, and then in immediately on a dime, as soon as George Clooney and Barack Obama told them to, flipping the switch and saying, of course, this person is, totally demented. Like, we got to get rid of him. Like, and then elevating Kamala Harris as if none of us had met her in 2019, and then like cheerleading her, cheerleading her, cheerleading her. And every week, a new attempt to like, bring Trump down on specious charges. Like, you cannot respect these people anymore. Like when you turn on your TV, you're seeing millionaires looking down on you, lecturing you, calling you racist, smearing you for not protecting their economic interests above those of your children. Like and I think that's really clear to people now. So they've like lost a lot of credibility, and we're now in the 6-week period that always comes after any big Democratic loss where you're allowed to say the things, right? Like you're never allowed to say the things, but when they lose big enough, they let you say the things for like a few weeks. So this morning on MSNBC and CNN, you heard people talking about cancel culture and how terrible it is. You heard people talking about immigration and how it brings down the wages of the working class. Like like the things that are true about this nation that are unsayable in liberal mainstream circles are sayable now in this little window. But I think that this sort of breakdown of the media's control over information is a really good thing. And I say that even though like Twitter right now there's never been more anti-Semitism. There's never been more like, outright misinformation. I think that's all great. Like, I just have a lot of faith in my fellow Americans that they'll find their way to the information that they need. So I think that it's really cool that like it feels like the promise of the internet is now coming to be. Like for a long time, they were like, this is the democratization of information. And for a long time, it wasn't. But now it really does feel like people know where to access the information that they need. And I just don't buy this narrative that people are easily duped. Like my fellow Americans are not easily duped. Like they know what is right for themselves and their families. Like when you have children, you're not just going to believe misinformation. Like you're going to go and find the information you need.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. And I mean, I will say this work is, to me, like if I've become one thing, like I keep saying like pro conversation, like pro free speech, yes, but also like we need to be able to have those conversations and get it out there and get it wrong sometimes. And, I believe in getting it wrong and trying to work on it than preventing someone from getting it wrong in the first place and allowing some of that flexibility. And a lot of what you're talking about is also just coming up for me because I'm also thinking about, I thought about a lot especially when I was at NBC and working in the media, the inputs that go into the media. We talk so much about the output, what comes out of it, but we so don't talk about what it goes into it, as much, and just, that can be a really important shift. So, I mean, it's cool to hear about, groups like the Free Press, where there is true political diversity here. And, at Braver Angels, like that's such an important part of our work, that like at all of our alliances, we have red blue co-chairs. And, if we're on a committee, whether we're like redesigning the website or coming up with, our programming for our convention, we have a red blue team, and we're really, really disciplined about it. And because we can see that brings better results. That people think of things and hear things that like I would never think of. I can think of I'm a person that like I'm open-minded. I have a lot of friends that disagree with me, all of that. I still, I still have certain blinders. And so being able to work in an environment where you're like actively with people day in and day out who vote and think differently than you is so important, I think, in a media culture. So with that, I just would love to think about and hear about what is giving you some hope about this, media now and in the future. There's so much hopelessness around the state of media. And we heard from two folks earlier, both Rich and Moore, who said that, this was Red Blue Pair who did the activity at the polls. And they were saying that before heading to the polls, they'd spoken to one another, and they were talking about, their feelings, and they both felt like if the other candidate won, like democracy as we know it, wouldn't really survive. And they both said that was a large part because of their media diets and kind of the ecosystems that they're swimming in. So I'd love to hear from you about what is giving you hope about media now.
Oh, I just feel really hopeful and optimistic about our country. And I just feel like we're very unified right now. I mean, I know that's a crazy thing to say, but there's no rioting in the streets. There's no violence. There's no women marching by the millions. Like, everyone accepted the result. Like, we're in such a good place right now. And I know that if your preferred candidate didn't win, it maybe doesn't feel that way. But the policy that we're about to see coming about is policy that's going to resonate with a lot of people. The American people are radically moderate. They're the least racist and most generous people on the planet. And we're about to see what it looks like when the most commonsensical, reasonable policy that caters to the needs of regular, hardworking people has a chance to breathe. And if that doesn't happen, we have a lot of guardrails in place. And I think that's another thing that maybe if your candidate lost, maybe something to feel optimistic about, which is, it is in the nature of power to try to get more of itself, to try to abuse itself. Power doesn't like to, give itself out to the people. It likes to consolidate itself and try to grasp for more. That's just what power does. And our institutions have proven unbelievably adept at standing up to attempts to consolidate power, get more power, abuse power from the right. And they have proven very bad at doing that when the threats come from the left, I think, because the institutions are by and large peopled by people of the left. But indeed, they've proven the handmaidens, one might even say, of abuses of power from the left when it comes to free speech, for example. So right now, what we have is a lot of people on the right have gotten power, and our institutions are girding their loins for the next 2 years of possibly even 3 branches of government on the same side, which means we're going to see a functioning democracy. I don't know how you can look at, for example, the gap between how much money Kamala Harris raised and spent and how much Trump did, which was, I don't know if it was half, but it was like much less. And he won every swing state. I mean, like, how can you not look at that, even if you hate him, and feel like the will of the American people is irrepressible? Like, it's the most incredible thing. Like, people showed up at an election and made decisions about what is best for themselves and their children. So I just feel like absolutely madly in love with this country. And like, I hope I would have felt that way if Kamala Harris had won in a big way as well. Like, I don't know if I would have,
Mm.
but I hope I would have felt that way. But I feel really committed to not gloating and to being the most generous version of myself, given what did end up happening, and being committed to explaining to people why I think that it's in all of our interests. I had a really productive conversation on the Honestly podcast from the Free Press this morning. I think it will be out tomorrow. And it was Barry, me, Peter, and then Brianna Wu, who's trans. And she said to me, well, I feel worried about healthcare for my community. And we had it out, and then we committed to being in this conversation, her bringing it up and me holding what is now, for now, my side to account. And she is one of these people who's transsexual, but feels very strongly that the trans movement has been co-opted by people who are not like her. And I feel very strongly that whatever the Republican Party has planned around that issue is to take on the excesses that she also doesn't like. But we'll see, right? And we will all be in this together to hold power to account.
Awesome.
But,
Thank you so much.
Batya, Gabby, thank you both so incredibly.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for being guest with us today, and looking forward to many deep and fruitful conversations with Batya Ungar-Sargon in the future.
Thank you.
I do want to express a note of regret here because we had anticipated the presence of Congressman Dean Phillips, Democratic congressman, and briefly a candidate for president himself, to offer his take on the moment that we're in, and of course the results of the election. And Congressman Phillips would have had a powerful and a relevant perspective coming from a different direction, of course. And sadly, Congressman Phillips suffered a flight delay, so he's not going to be able to make it with us tonight. But he did send word that he is available to us. He's a great supporter of Braver Angels and somebody who's dedicated to being a force for optimism and reconciliation, working alongside of us. So I do want to just go ahead and give him an honorable mention for tonight. But next, I am pleased to introduce, as we draw towards the close of our gathering, and I want people to stay to the end because we do have an extraordinary musical performance coming up. But first, we have a message of hope, of American hope, that I look forward to hearing from Braver Angels co-founders David Blankenhorn, David Lapp, and Bill Doherty.
Well, yes, it's I'm honored again to be here, and I've been thinking today about the range of feelings and reactions within among Braver Angels members to the events of the last 24 hours. My day began. I was talking with a Braver Angels member who leans red and who was, thrilled by the results of the election and feeling like it was, finally, people who in his perspective, whose voices had not been heard, made their voices heard, and it resulted in helping to get Donald Trump elected. And there was a lot of kind of like, gratification and feeling of like democracy, our democratic republic is working as it should. And then on the other hand, when I opened my email inbox this morning, I saw that a dear Braver Angels friend on the blue side, is wondering, is thinking about Trump as, from his perspective, a pillar of polarization, and how could I continue, in my work as a Braver Angel and not, resist the person that I see as the pillar of polarization? How can I hold these two things compatible? And so I'm just, struck by that, about that range of feelings and reactions to the events of the last 24 hours. And I want to say, I think it is good that we are able right now to hold, both of those feelings. And I guess I want to say, and I'd love to hear from you, Bill and David, about this, but I guess I want to say, kind of, along my conversation with Diego and Jim, that at best we are an organization. Bravery Angels is a movement where people who, can fight for their cause and for their convictions, and they can do that, within Bravery Angels, outside of Bravery Angels, but also can work towards better understanding, finding common ground when possible, and doing the work of building trust. And I guess I just hope that whatever our politics are, that we can see that it is good that we fight for those things that we believe are important, and it is good that we continue the work of building trust so that we can keep this democratic republic going. But Bill and David, I'm wondering how you're thinking about all this.
Well, David, you want to go?
Yeah, for me, it's just continue the work, just continue the work. And I mean, it just seems to me like the biggest problem that we're facing right now as a country is that we're a nation where rancor and mistrust are riding high, and about half of the country increasingly detests the other half. And until we break this underlying fever, none of us gets the country we want. No matter who won this election, and no matter who will win the next one. So, for those of us who believe this at Braver Angels, the great task before us is to continue the work of repair that we are engaged in. Without despair, without triumphalism regarding this election, and without contempt for the voters who we think have been wrong. And so I guess the way I'm looking at this is that I'm sort of putting aside as best I can my own personal feelings about, who do I wish won or who do I wish lost. I'm just trying to put that aside and say the real crisis we face is not about who do we wish won yesterday or who we wish lost, but about the work that we have to do. Because that's I think, to me, that's the central crisis that we face. Because, unless we can solve this one, who wins or loses this election or the next election is less than. So, I don't know what you think, Bill, but I guess for me, it's just the honor, really, of being able to work with you all for this goal that I think is larger than who wins or loses any one election. And so for me, that's what puts a kind of feeling of optimism in my step of what, when I wake up in the morning, I'm feeling like, let's go to work to do this larger thing. So that's it.
Well, David, I'm in a very similar place. As you were talking, I was thinking about the phrase from the old Latin American revolutionaries, la lucha continua, the struggle continues. Okay.
Yes.
And polarization, it was not going to lessen no matter who won, in my opinion. Right. I'm not sure it's increased that much. Okay. I mean, it's a matter of which side has the most grievance. And so, as you said, I have my own particular policy views and so on. But in terms of what we're here to do, as I've heard you say, David B., this is the moment that we prepared for. I mean, this is what we're working on, the problem, the meta problem, the problem that keeps us from solving all the other problems. So that's where That's where, so I'm calmer today than I thought I would be because of that. And I thought I put this in concrete terms, that there are three events coming up in the next week that I'm involved in related to Brave Angels, which are going to go ahead. Like, there's absolutely no doubt they've been planned for a while. They're going to go ahead regardless of this election. And so tomorrow, I'm doing a webinar for the National Restaurant Association, which has reached out to us. It's one of the largest industries. It's the restaurant and food service industry. And they are concerned about what's happening in their workforce, and sometimes between customers and their workforce. It's a very diverse workforce, mostly working class and low income in terms of the front line, politically diverse. And they're having trouble navigating this highly polarized time. And so they've reached out to us. And the beginning of that is going to be a webinar tomorrow. We'll see. Hopefully, we're going to do more. Nobody thought to call that off. You know, the election was yesterday, and I'm on the rehearsal call with them today. Like,
right.
In fact, if anything, they said it's more important that we proceed. On Monday, I'm facilitating a gathering of students from Macalester College, which is one of the most liberal colleges in Minnesota and in the country, and the University of Northwestern, which is a Bible college, if you will, one of the most conservative, certainly in this state. And this will be the fourth meeting of a group of students and the presidents of those colleges breaking bread together and getting to know each other as human beings. And then next week, going ahead with a webinar for 100 elected officials in Minnesota, who mayors, city council people, county commissioners. One of our workshops is called Managing Difficult Conversations with Constituents. Nobody's thinking of canceling that or changing that. And notice the work continues, the struggle continues.
Yes.
And that's our mission. That's what I'm geared toward.
Yes. That's how I feel it too.
For me, I'm thinking about, for instance, I mean, I referenced this during my conversation with Diego and Jim, but like, for me, it's like, okay, well, let's see what we can let's see what common ground we can find on one of the most difficult issues in the country, immigration. But what's amazing is there you see people willing to come together and say, what unusual things might we be able to do together? What creative possibilities might there be? And so with immigration, for instance, we've got a whole slew of things that were, common ground workshops at the local levels, Braver Angels debates at the local levels. The experts and advocates are going to be getting together. And so for me, that's where my head goes. It's like, all right, well, let's get to work. Let's see what we can do to find solutions, find common solutions to our problems. One other thing that strikes me is I take inspiration from Pope Francis. He talks about how there's three approaches to conflict. First approach, you ignore it. You pretend it's not happening. Second approach, you become a prisoner of conflict. You just become locked in polarization. Third approach, you face the conflict head on. You resolve it, he says, and you make it a link in the chain of a new process. And you see what new thing might happen as a result of our taking this conflict head on and saying, well, what new and interesting things might we be able to do here? And so that's always how I think of Braver Angels, is that what new possibilities are out there as a result of our coming together.
Yeah, that's beautiful, David. That's meant a lot to me too. That insight's meant a lot to me too. So thank you. I think that's what we're trying to do here. The fleeting glory of this electoral victory or that electoral victory is not as important as the deeper work that we're all here committed to do. So.
Amen. Thank you very much, gentlemen. We're all pleased to hear from you tonight. Oh man, this is quite a moment we find ourselves in, and there have been many remarkable moments that we found ourselves in over what has only been the 8-year lifespan to date of Braver Angels as an organization and as a community. Now it's interesting. I mean, you heard from a small selection of voices from within our community tonight. And as Batya Ungar-Sargon was talking about the different environments and the different, that is to say, the different environments, the different media outlets that she was hopping back and forth from during the election yesterday, I had cause to remember where I was last night. I was in the studios of KBLA 1580, which is Tavis Smiley's talk radio network, and many folks here will recognize the name Tavis Smiley. He's one of the most influential Black journalists in America and has been for decades. And KBLA, on which I have a weekend show myself, happens to be the only Black talk radio network west of the Mississippi River, and it is decidedly progressive. And the environment in that place could not have been more sharply different than what Batya was describing. For the folks that I was with last night, all of them happened to be African American. There was this sense that America had just won a victory for white supremacy, that we had just elected a man back to office who has been a constant perpetual threat to the Constitution, a sense that the lives and welfare of people of color and many marginalized communities in America was now actively under threat by the return of this president, this administration. And I know that the feelings of fear and concern that they were feeling, that were deep and real for the people I was with last night, are also deep and real for many of the people in this room, even as many others of us feel that the American project has a new opportunity for prosperity, for the securing of our natural interests, and for the reestablishing of American greatness at home and around the world. These visceral emotions exist within us side by side as neighbors. The reason for the work of Braver Angels, the reason for the work that we do, is to keep us in relationship with each other such that no matter how high the emotions run, no matter how high the stakes are at any given election, we still remember that the only way we can achieve any of the things we wish to achieve as a nation is by being able to work alongside of each other in the context of our democracy and to live alongside of each other as neighbors and friends, willing to reason together about the facts, willing to reason together about the issues, and to arrive at the sorts of solutions that can push us forward as a nation in a spirit of trust and co-commitment and commitment to one another. And so, if nothing else, I hope that you have seen that spirit evidenced in the way we have shown up here this evening. And for anybody who is not a member of Braver Angels, for anybody who's not familiar with our work, you are here with a small sample of what is a community of 15,000 or so Republicans, Democrats, independents, members of third parties across America, representing more than 100 local bipartisan alliances, work on dozens and dozens of college campuses across America, legislative caucuses in several states and different parts of the country, a media network that highlights amazing personalities like Mónica Guzmán and others, and a community that is dynamically impacting and resewing the fabric of American democratic trust, of American social connection, one institution, one community, and one family at a time. But we can do this on a whole nother level if you are a part of it, and if you're willing to be a part of it as we travel forward in time over the course of this next 4 years, to see what happens then and after. And so with that, I want to begin to bring us to a close, but not before we invite the musical participation of my friend John Carroll, leader of Braver Angels' music team. And we didn't even get a chance to talk about Braver Angels' arts and cultural work. We'll save that for another time. But John Carroll is here to sing us, to take us home with a song of American hope. John.
Thanks, John. This song was written by a group of artists who had joined us in Kenosha for a training session where they were being trained to go back out into their own communities and teach others how to imagine a better world. And so I just wanted to give credit where credit's due. In church beside my daddy, I learned the world was good. I trusted in the system. I did everything I should. But despite an honest effort, disappointment through the years, I could find no understanding. I fell captive to my fears. Oh, I don't know what is hope. Just have faith is what they told me, but the path I couldn't see. Had to find my way to family, where the roads are meant to meet. It's a place where we can gather. It's a home that we all need. It's a movement for tomorrow and our shared humanity. Oh, now I know what is hope. Hope is the light that we breathe. Hope is a dance between you and me. Hope is friends that don't agree, choosing curiosity. Hope is planted like a seed, pushing up through the concrete, being brave enough to try. Hope is soaring through the sky. Ooh, I will start right here, right now. Oh, no, we'll reach a higher ground. Oh, in my city, in my town. Oh, hope is the light that we breathe. Hope is a dance between you and me. Hope is friends that don't agree, choosing curiosity. Hope is planted like a seed, pushing up through the concrete, being brave enough to try. Hope is soaring towards the sky. Thank you all.
Thank you all very much. Good night.
Thanks, everybody.